In the world of filmmaking, there are so many different factors that can contribute to a film's success, be it performance, lighting, camera work, but honestly, none of that really matters if where you're filming your time travel, action, thriller, romance is your daughter's sandbox. Actually, it could be kind of cool, like you take sand out and you go backward in time, you put sand in and you go forward in time. Anyway, locations are the backbone of any production, and there's three primary things I look for when I'm scouting locations. Stick around because later in the video, I'm going to show you my favorite tool for finding the best angle in any location. The first attribute I always look for is depth. Depth is one of those things that we take for granted in video. It's just kind of like you put the camera there and you put your subject and then whatever's behind them is behind them. But that's why I feel like a lot of cinematography nowadays feels like an interview. It's just the camera, the subject, and the background, when in reality, there's a lot of different places you can put the subject. Also, just frankly, an image that has more depth, more distance between the camera and the background is just more interesting. There's more opportunities to use leading lines and make the images more artful, right? You can use composition to its fullest effect in these type of situations. Recently, I shot two different projects. One of them was a short film for my friend Neil, and then the other was a music video for an artist, Electric Leche. Both of these setups particularly had a lot of depth to the image. One of them is a perceived depth going out a window, and the other one is actual depth of this big restaurant. Filming on a wide-angle lens in the restaurant made the depth feel more visceral. Also, this spot was really cool because the leading lines of the booth that went off into the back corner kind of communicated that there was something behind her, right? There was a lot of negative space behind her head, so it kind of felt like we were expecting something to come out of that back corner. I think some of the problem with some of the newer films is that they're filmed on green screen, and that depth, that natural depth is just not there. Typically, I find myself going into the corners of the room and looking around and seeing where the most depth is, and trying to utilize that to the best of my ability. If we're in a living room, I'm going to try to put my subject in the middle of the room. That way there's so much space behind them and in front of them. Sometimes when you don't have enough space, you just have to bring your character closer. So that's what happened on this music video that we shot last month. We didn't have a whole lot of space in this particular living room, so we brought the character closer to the camera so that there would be more depth behind them, while also basically removing the foreground from the image. I don't like to do that all the time, but I do think that it is a great way to create depth in a space that doesn't have any. That's also depending on like where your light is coming from, but I never have to worry about that, and I'll tell you about that in a second. The second thing I always look for is color. Color doesn't necessarily mean like the color of the walls or the floor or whatever, but it's more about like complementary colors between what is occupying the space. Is the rug in the same color tone as the couch or a complementary color tone? And then also wardrobe, making sure that the wardrobe matches the couch, matches the floor, matches the walls, the ambience. Part of the decision for this particular music video to use the colors that we were is because we were telling a story. We were going from a place of very dark artificial light into a place of surrealist, kind of very positive moonlight, very bright. So naturally that kind of influences the colors that we want to play with. The red ottoman and the tan couch balanced really well with the warm lamp, so we made sure that Michael wore neutral tones to not interfere with those colors that were already playing well together. If a space has a glaring color issue that just can't be fixed, and you don't really want to bend like your wardrobe and all these other things to match that space, you have to find a different space. I don't think it's worth your time to film a piece in a space that just doesn't work if you're gonna have to change what that piece is to make the location work. Wait it out, find a better location, find something that's neutral, and then add stuff to it. Pictures on the wall, posters, artwork, and plants, and those are the sort of things that can liven up a space color-wise that maybe is a little bit dull to begin with. If everything is pink in the room, you're not going to be able to make the room not look pink. I would much rather work in a space that's dull and add stuff to it to make it feel more fleshed out than to start with a space that is really crazy and weird and try to pull it back, because I feel like the crazy and weird always gets through. So naturally, the third way is probably the most important way to influence how something looks in the first place. It's lighting. Now, typically in a space, you want to try to use what's already there, but it can be tricky trying to balance out what feels real in the moment and what looks real on the camera. The music video for Soliloquy, that location looked incredibly artificial to the naked eye, but then you put it through the lens of a camera and it actually balanced out pretty well. We just had a soft, warm key motivated by that lamp, creating a little hair light on our main character, and then we had a little blue light outside coming in representing moonlight, and then we had the ambient light off of his laptop keying his face. And then for this other film, we were inside of a Steak and Shake, and it looks normal, like you go in there and it just feels like a restaurant, but then you actually put a camera on somebody sitting underneath all of those fluorescent lights, and it just looks terrible. So what was kind of cool is we were able to work with the manager to go back into the breaker room, and we were able to turn off all of the overhead fluorescence to where just these practicals, they're just kind of like soft, cool, fluorescent almost style lights. But when we killed the overhead lights, which were the true fluorescence, all of a sudden, based on where they were sitting in the booth, they were being keyed and hair lighted by the light in front of them and the light behind them. And it was just perfect based on where the camera angle was. And so we just decided to roll with that and use that as our key. We blasted in some bluish light from outside, kind of pretending to be the moon or a street light maybe. That was what we did with the scene. Taking light away made the scene a lot more believable. Removing light is honestly the best thing you can do for a location. Making sure that practicals are motivated or turned off. Side note on practicals. The thing I love about it is it's real. It's real light interacting with the space. An actor can go low next to it and be keyed by it. They can be underlit by it if they're standing up. It's natural and it feels real to the space. And as long as you create opportunities in the blocking for the actors to actually interact with the light in different ways, it's gonna feel cinematic. Now, obviously you can't influence the color of every space. I try to not influence the color by adding light. I've seen some people try to do that where they balance out like a lot of blue in a space by shooting a lot of tungsten through the window. And that to me, it just like, it ends up getting really, really muddy when you're trying to preserve skin tones and stuff like that. You don't want to fight the location too much because it's not going to feel real. Had we turned those practicals off and then had some light blasting through the back window, none of it would make sense. And frankly, it's like, why work harder? Like, it looks good. The practicals are doing the motivation. The location is helping tell the story. Don't fight it. But that's shooting an interior at night. What do I do during the day? The sun is the great gaffer in the sky. So you're working against, the brightest thing in the world, literally. I always try to find where the light is going to be coming from in the first place. So I use the Lumos app. Lumos is just I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. It's an augmented reality app that will show you where the sun is coming from at a particular time of day. Like in real time, you can stand in the location and see like, oh, at 1 p.m., the sun is gonna be coming through this window. So we should not shoot here at 1 p.m. Or if we just turn everybody, it'll be backlighting them at 1 p.m. and we'll shoot that here and let that motivate the scene. Those are the type of things that can make any location feel a little bit more cinematic, for lack of a better term. So use the Lumos app, put the sun behind your subject, and just shoot that direction. That's my best advice. Cinematography is about keeping it simple, right? You want to tell your story the most effective way possible, and you don't want to fight a location and end up with something that looks staged or fake. These techniques are the way any location can be an asset to your production as opposed to a hindrance. Thanks for watching.